Question for candidate Ramos. Almost 6 million Americans are not permitted to vote because of past felonies. This disproportionately affects the poor and minority communities. Would you support legislation that restores the rights of felons to vote nationally?
Yes, they pay their due and they pay their time. They should be restored all their rights. This system of privatizing jails and trying to get people back in, that's why we keep doing this. I mean, if we don't restore their rights, we don't give them access to housing, to health care, they're just going to reoffend. And that needs to stop because that's affecting minorities. That includes blacks, Hispanics, at a different rate than everybody else. And I was shocked to realize that, we don't have federal legislation that gives people their rights after they paid their due.
Thank you, candidate Skold. Same question. Almost 6 million Americans are not permitted to vote because of past felonies. This disproportionately affects poor and minority communities. Would you support legislation that restores the rights of felons to vote nationally?
When a person has been released from jail, it's because they've served their time and they have repented. So yes, I do support that they can have their voting rights reestablished. In addition to that, I also support banning the box. The only time that I would not support that is if you are working with children and you need to know that someone is a predator. Other than that, we need to ban the box. There are so many people who have been put into jail that for crimes that potentially in the future may not be a crime. For example, the National Institutes on Health has declared drug addiction to be a disease, a chronic disease. So that means heroin as well. So they are making it the same as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So let's go through this a little bit. Let's say a diabetic is now illegal because we're going to equate it like a drug addict right now. So if that's illegal, they go to the doctor to get insulin. The doctor says, I can't give you insulin. So they go find insulin on the street. But a police officer sees them do that, so now they're in jail. And so now they have a felony. And so now they try to go get a job. What are they going to do if they can't get a job? But they have to survive, right? Because that is the human nature, to survive. So they're going to do something in order to be able to survive. If they can't get a job, we as a society are failing them. We need to change that. And the way to start is by making sure that we take, it's in my platform as well, take drug and alcohol addiction out of the criminal system and put it into the healthcare system. And so now all those felons are now, they're not illegal, they're not felons, so it's unfair. That's one example of why I do support restoring their ability to vote and banning the box.
Candidate Skold, what is a fair living wage and what would the effects of making it mandatory nationally be?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What is a fair living wage and what would the effects of making it mandatory nationally be?
A fair living wage, that is so important. When we have a fair living wage, we have employees who can now spend money to consume, and so the economy benefits by that. That's after their family has benefited, because now they can go buy food. I come from a family that did not have a fair living wage until my mom got a job with Boeing, a union job, and then she had a family living wage. All of a sudden we could buy food. We could go to the doctor when we had earaches. It made all the difference in the world. The fair living wage in Seattle is different than the fair living wage in another city in the Midwest. So we do need to look at what is fair in that area. So what is fair living wage? I would say that varies based on location, and that they can do a study and find that fair living wage. In Seattle, we are supporting $15. In SeaTac, they already have $15 per hour. That's a fair living wage that's been determined in our area.
Candidate Ramos, what is a fair living wage and what would the effects of making it mandatory nationally be?
So that's a two-part question. What's the fair minimum wage? The federal minimum wage is at $7.25. In the state of Washington, it's at $9.47. We were progressive enough to get it it couldn't pass by the legislature. We needed an initiative to pass a minimum wage that would escalate with the cost of living. I believe we need to do that federally so it doesn't come back to vote and becomes politicized every few years. We need to make it automatic for the federal government. And that amount, it's going to vary based on the region. You cannot force somebody to have a $15 minimum wage down in Mississippi, Alabama, because that's going to, make everything worse. Instead of helping, it's going to make it worse. But we can start by incrementally increasing the minimum wage incrementally. I signed off on. I'm signed off on the initiative that we're raising the minimum wage in the state. I was in Wenatchee, and I signed the initiative. So I'm in favor of raising it. And what's the number? Let's start with says 725 federally, maybe 10, and then start going there incrementally to 12, 13, 14. But we don't have to make it politicized every couple of years, because this is not about Democrats or Republicans, it's about people's lives. And when you bring more money to the lower, people don't have a good, decent job, they're more likely to spend it and get the economy to go faster. When you're making $100,000 a year, you're going to save that money. When you're making $14,000, you spend every single penny. And you shouldn't be living on $14,000 a year. You should have a living wage that is accommodating for the area. Because if you raise the minimum wage just first, everything else is going to go up. So, sorry.
Candidate Ramos, over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of conflict between the government and the tech sector. We saw the FBI and Apple having a lawsuit against each other. Recently, Microsoft has filed a lawsuit to be allowed to tell people when warrants have been served against their emails. How do you see Congress helping to bridge this divide between the government and the tech sector?
I think that the government needs to come up to the technology age. There's a lot of factors involved in national security, and I can be here up on stage and tell you that I'm in favor of every warrant or everything else, but it's like there's so many cases. I don't know enough about the technological needs and limitations to give you a direct answer. So I'm going to do a little more research on figuring out where I can actually stand on that issue.
Thank you. Alida Skold, where do you see Congress's role in bridging the divide between the government and technology sectors?
So internet neutrality is a very important issue, and that's where government can help bridge the divide. We need to be sure that internet is always accessible to everyone, and that it's fair, and that it's affordable. The government brought a suit against Microsoft a long time ago, declaring that it was a monopoly, and Microsoft had to go through years of defending itself, and it was discovered that no, Microsoft was not a monopoly. I think that it's very important that we have a regulatory environment with disruptive technologies that help the technology to move forward with fairness. I think that we need to increase our ability to compete, and in order to do that, our government has to support innovation and research, and they need to work together on that. So when regulation is being developed, it's very important to include stakeholders from both sides. So government officials get together with leadership from technology. So Google, Microsoft, Apple, all of those. They get together and they talk about it so that they can cross that divide more effectively and efficiently.
Thank you.